Welcome back to Fox Local with Fox 5 News Now. I'm Judea Murray. Summer has just began. It's an exciting time. I know a lot of you want to get out there, get grilling, probably get out there on the water. And one of the most important things that we are going to discuss today is water safety, how to make sure that even though you're having fun, you're also being safe. So we decided to sit down with Mark McKinnon from the Georgia's Department of Natural Resources. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I wanted to have this conversation because I saw a new statistic, within the last year, the CDC said that drownings are on the rise here in the U.S. And with you being from the Department of Natural Resources, I was just wondering, are you guys seeing that here in Georgia being reflected?
Well, we haven't really seen an increase in, actual number of drownings, but we are seeing more and more people out on our waterways. I think water recreation is becoming more and more popular. And I think people are just excited about getting out and having a good time. And our goal, of course, is to prevent drownings and prevent boating incidents and that sort of thing. We want people to go out and have a good time on the waterways, but we want them to do it safely. And so that's the goal of law enforcement division here at DNR, to try to just be out there to patrol and make sure that folks are doing things safely.
It is certainly good to hear that here in Georgia, things aren't as, I guess you could say, bad or escalating as they are around the rest of the country. One thing that I do know is that a lot of times people, they know that they're a great swimmer in the pool. They've taken the lessons growing up. And then they get out there on the open water and things are a little different. Do you think that, I mean, like I said, knowing that you're a strong swimmer in the pool, is that enough?
Well, people need to understand that swimming in a pool is very different than swimming in a natural body of water. There are a lot of additional hazards in natural bodies of water. You have debris in the water that you won't have in a pool. When you go to a swimming pool, you can stand there on the side, you can look, you can see the bottom, you can see everything in that pool. Oftentimes, especially after a rainstorm or such, there are many lakes that you can't see even 1 foot down into the water because it is so muddy or murky. And when that happens, there could be other debris. There could be a stump. There could be a log that is partially submerged in the water. Just so many different possible hazards out there, and you have to take that into account when you're out on a lake or a river.
So actually, that's a great segue. I wanted to talk about some of the common things, but some of the things that you wouldn't think about while you're out there on the water. You mentioned some of them, like a log in the water or anything else. Can you talk about a couple of other things that people wouldn't think about until it's too late?
Yeah, one big one is you mentioned folks saying that they're good swimmers,
Hmm.
and of course, a lot of people are very good swimmers. And some people, though, overestimate their abilities out on a lake. For instance, someone who's a very good swimmer might see an island out there in the lake that doesn't look that far away, or a cove that doesn't look like it'd be hard to swim across.
Hmm.
Uh, but it's much further than they think. Distance is very difficult to judge on the water. And so what happens is they swim, they get halfway, they are so exhausted that they can't make it the rest of the way. And we have had a number of people over the years to drown because they simply thought they could swim further than they could, even though they were good swimmers. And that's a real problem. So the best thing to do if you want to swim across the cove or swim to the island is put a
Hmm.
life jacket on. If you get tired, you can just stop, float around for a minute, rest, catch your breath, and then keep going. But without that life jacket, you really have nothing to hold you up when you get overtired.
Mark, you mentioned the life jacket. I just want to double check here in the state of Georgia. Are you required by law to wear a life jacket and when?
The life jacket laws only apply to boating in Georgia, and what it says is if you're on a boat, you must have a life jacket for every person on that boat. It must be U.S. Coast Guard approved, and it must be properly fitting. Now, if you have children on that boat, any children under the age of 13 must be wearing that life jacket if that boat is in motion. Uh, Adults don't have to wear them, although we highly encourage that. But children must be wearing it. The law states that they are required to.
Actually, let's talk about boats. This is my first time living in a state that is so close to the coast. I mean, we touch the coast. And so I'm seeing that a lot of people love boating. A lot of people like getting on jet skis. Um, while you're out there trying to have fun for the summer with the party, sometimes you want to bring libations, but what are the rules road with alcohol and drug use on a boat?
Well, as far as boating under the influence,
Mhm.
it is exactly the same as driving under the influence. 0.08 blood alcohol content. You would be considered legally drunk if you were trying to drive a boat. And that would be an offense that would require us to arrest you on the water, and you would go to jail for that. People don't understand that boating and drinking is as dangerous or more dangerous than drinking and driving. So, what we recommend is if you're going to drink on your boat, have a designated operator, just like you would have a designated driver if you were drinking at a party or whatnot, and we're going trying to go home. It is so much better to have that designated driver and not have to worry about whether you're going to get arrested or whether you're going to hurt yourself or someone else or possibly even kill someone by driving that boat drunk. And it's just not worth it. And let me mention one other thing about boating under the influence. It does not just apply to alcohol. It applies to illegal drugs, and it also applies to prescription drugs, even if it is your own prescription.
Oh,
If you
I
have a
would never think
prescription
about
drug
that.
that causes you to be impaired, then you do not need to be operating a boat or a car for that matter if you are taking that medication.
Um, I'm really happy that you mentioned the prescriptions because I don't think that people would necessarily think about that. And like I have mentioned, when all you're trying to think about is the fact that you're going out there on the water, you're going to have fun with your friends, with your family. Maybe it's like a bachelor or bachelorette trip. So these are just some of the things that you don't factor in. I wanted to ask you too, do you have to have any type of special license or do you have to go under any training before you operate a boat or a jet ski?
It, yeah, in Georgia, back in 2000, I believe 13, the legislature passed the boating education law, and what it says is anyone born on or after January 1st of 1998
Hmm.
must take a boater education course approved by DNR. You can find those on our website, and some of them are free, some of them are paid. But they are extensive. It takes a few hours to go through this class, but it gives you some of the basics in boating. If you take that class, then you can operate a boat in Georgia. That's if you're born on or after 1998, January 1st.
Hmm.
If you were born before that, you are not required to take boater education in Georgia, but we recommend it. Just even if you've been boating all your life, sometimes it's good to have a refresher to remember some of the laws. And sometimes laws change and new laws come up, and so you want to know about those. But we do have that requirement in Georgia.
Okay. I want to ask you because we have been doing quite a few safety segments here on Fox Local. When you're going through like hurricane season, there is a hurricane emergency kit to put together. So I was just wondering, a water safety plan. What should you get together when you know that you're going to go out on the water and have fun with your friends? What are some of the things you should plan ahead of time?
Well, let me talk about required items first. On a
Okay.
boat that has a motor, what is required, as I mentioned earlier, are the life jackets. One for each person, properly fitting, U.S. Coast Guard approved. You also, if your boat has a motor, you also must have a fire extinguisher that is properly charged. And of course, if you look at your fire extinguisher, there's a little gauge on there. You just want to be sure that the gauge says that it is in good operating condition and is ready to be used. And then you also have to have a throwable device. And people have seen these. That if you've seen the rings or you've
Attached to
seen
this
a,
the
a,
rope.
a throw cushion. It looks like a cushion with two handles on the side that you could throw to someone who is in distress in the water. Those are all of the required items. However, it's also good to make sure that you do some just common sense things if you're going to be out during the summer. Make sure that you have plenty of water on board so you can stay hydrated. Be sure that you are not distracted out on the water. Just be sure that if you're out by yourself, that you have left some information with someone as to what time you're leaving, what time you'll be back. and where you're going, so that they can expect you back. And if you don't return at that time, they would know to contact someone to make sure that you're okay. Just a simple water safety plan. Also, if you're out with your family, it's a good idea to beforehand just to talk it through and say, if we were to have some emergency, each person has an assignment. Maybe one person is assigned to call 911. One person is assigned to assist someone who might be injured. One person is assigned to make sure that the boat is still being properly operated in that case. So those type things are the main things that you need to think about. And oftentimes you want to think about those before you go out to the water.
Okay. I'm glad that you brought that up with the families, especially because the next question I was going to ask you is when you have kids, how do you implement them into your safety plan? Is there any other tips that you can give that you haven't already mentioned?
No, I think just encouraging the kids of the importance of wearing their life jacket. I think that is a good thing to instill in them at a young age. So many of us who've been around for a little while. Back in the day, there were no life jacket laws, and we didn't wear life jackets, and we were blessed that that we didn't have a tragedy occur. But we see today that life jackets are just as important as seatbelts in a car. That We rarely find a drowning victim who is wearing a life jacket. Almost it almost never happens. And so just the fact that you have that life jacket on is going to increase your chance of surviving uh, just multiple times. And it's important that you wear that. And it's good to instill that in children and just instill general safety rules for the kids, and also for them to understand that there's a reason for those rules. It's not just because mom or dad said so. It's for their own safety and for the safety of others.
And just double checking, because we have mentioned life jackets, and we're talking about children. Are life jackets like a one size fit all type of situation, or do they come in different sizes, especially when weight becomes a factor? Just wondering.
There are different sizes. Typically, there are basically four sizes in general. You have infant, and that is one for obviously very small babies, and it is designed to keep that child's head out of the water,
Mhm.
as an infant would not necessarily be able to do that on their own. And then you have a child size, then you have a youth size, and then you have an adult size. And so there are four sizes. They have weights usually marked in them, so it's very easy to determine what size your child would need when you go to purchase those life jackets.
And also just double checking our floaties, they get them for the arms and for the legs for children. Is that enough, or no, you also need a life jacket?
Floaties are not considered a Coast Guard approved life jacket, so that would not be proper on a boat or any. I mean, they're nice to have in the swimming pool if mom and dad are right there, but they are really not the type of life jacket we're looking for. We need something that is more substantial than the floaties for children.
Got you. Okay, well, Mark, I know that you have been doing this for quite some time. The Georgia Department of Natural Resources sees a lot of different cases and unfortunately has a lot of different investigations throughout the year. If you don't mind me just mentioning some off the top of my head that are really pressing in our area. So we have Ramon Diaz Soria, who the 27-year-old who was found on Lake Lanier last Thursday. We learned from his sister that he didn't know how to swim, but he was wearing supposedly a life vest at the time that he drowned. Then we have Dustin Valencia, father of five from Cumming, who was kayaking on Lake Lanier in May. Also, a couple of months ago, the couple that was found on Lake Oconee, Joycelyn Nicole Wilson and Gary Jones, they had a boating accident in February. While they found Wilson pretty early, it took weeks for divers and officials to find Gary. These are a lot of stories that we are hearing here in our newsroom. They can be scary. For all of the investigations that you have seen through your office, are there any that stick with you? Just curious.
I'll be honest with you. They all stick with me. Every one is a tragedy. Every one affects a family and friends. And we talk about boating fatalities and drownings, but they're not just numbers. Every one of those numbers represents a person that is lost and is lost too early. And so, that is our real goal. And one of the worst things that a game warden has to do is to have to go out and locate someone who is drowned and or have to work a boating fatality and then have to notify that family that they've lost a loved one. And most of the time, the vast majority of the time, those incidents are preventable if the proper safety precautions are in place. And so, they all stick with me. And my goal is to have a number of zero drownings and zero boating fatalities. And that's what all of our guys want. Like I said earlier, our goal is for you to go to the lake and have a good time and to go home safely at the end of the day. That would be the best day for a game warden, and that, of course, would be the best day for individuals who are visiting the lake or river.
Mhm. Well, us here too at Fox 5 Atlanta and Fox Local, that is all that we want for our viewers as well. Well, if you could give any final thoughts, I was just wondering one last tip. If our viewers didn't listen to anything else that you said today, this one tip that you hope sticks with them.
Wear your life jacket, no matter whether you are at the lake or the river. And I'll add to that maybe a second tip, and that second tip would be please supervise your children when they are swimming. Don't take your eyes off those little ones. They're very precious to us, and we don't want to lose them. And so don't be on your iPad or not paying attention while your child's in the water. It's very, very important to supervise the little ones.
Mark, I just want to thank you so much for the time that you have given us today. We appreciate all the tips, the advice. I know we can send people to the Georgia Department of Natural Resources website if they have any other questions. You guys have frequently asked questions listed on there. So thank you for your time. And for everybody streaming, we will get you to a break and we'll come back with even more content and more good news after this.
You can listen to Fox 5 Live on the Fox 5 Radio 1 network. Just tune your HD radio to 107.9 HD2 FM.